I may choose to tell the truth. I may choose not to tell the truth. That's my decision. Now, do you, as the journalist, when you interview that person or another person, if you know they're lying to you, will you call them on the carpet? Or will you play the referee and maybe say, just let them talk, let the public decide, let somebody else decide? Do you think it's your job, giving an interview, to sort of, give him the rope to hang himself, so to speak, or herself?
Within reason, I think I have an obligation. If I'm conducting that interview and you say something to me that I know to be false, I think I've got an obligation to call you out. When I say within reason, I only mean that I think, and you may all disagree with this, but I think that in the current climate, it's almost to excess. When every single thing is called out, it almost perpetuates this perception that the media, hypothetically, is against this individual, whoever this individual might be. I'm not so good at this. I did an interview 3 weeks ago with Rand Paul. And I was interviewing Rand Paul about the impeachment process, and he said a number of things that people via social media said to me, you should have called him out for X, Y, and Z. And I went back and I took a look at the interview and I thought, geez, there's some truth to that. I probably should have. Sometimes you look at a journalist and you say, well, they must be biased because they let that pass. Not recognizing that in an instance like that, I was conducting an interview in a little anteroom adjacent to a ballroom where I'd just spoken to 500 people. I had to catch a plane in order to do this interview, and if we didn't get it done within 8 minutes, I was going to miss my flight back to Philadelphia. In other words, stuff happens. And sometimes there are things going on in the orbit of the interview that you might not take into consideration. And sometimes I'm guilty of making the mistake, which is to not be a good listener. Shannon teaches a course. In fact, I'll ask him about it in my portion of questioning him, how to ask a question. I think that in order to do what I do and be good at it is to not only ask a decent question, but also to be a good listener. And the problem is that I'll go in with notes, and I'll have 4 things that I want to cover, and I've asked you about number 3, and you've just given me something that I should be pursuing, but something gets in my head, and I need to get to number 4. So I don't know if that answers your question. If you tell me a blatant falsehood and I know it, shame on me for not saying, wait a minute, Senator, Congressman, Mr. President, whomever it might be. That's just not the case.
Okay, and Mike, when you say you have an obligation to correct it, what is the root of that obligation in your mind? Is that because you are legally trained? Is that because you were trained by your parents? Is that because of your sense of citizenship? Is it of a sense of being an appropriate journalist? And if so, where does that come from? I mean, what is the wellspring of the use of the word obligation?
Right. So I guess it comes from, in my case, I think you're asking me not only about a professional responsibility, but also a moral compass, which is a presumptive question. But, to the extent I have one, I think it has come from the way in which I was raised, community factors, education, not, frankly, a big religious influence in my case. I'm a cafeteria Catholic. It means I go through the aisle and I take the turkey sandwich, but I leave the Jell-O. I'm not in for the whole program. Thank you, Shannon. I appreciate I'm here all week. But it's not as if I've been formally trained. I was a journalism major, so I think I picked up some of the grounding for that. But it's Potter Stewart. It's pornography. I know it when I see it.
Okay.
And I also don't. I mean, finally on that question, I also. What matters most to me is my reputation. I don't mind the criticism that's unfounded. It goes with the territory. But I don't want you telling me, you a person I respect, hey, you should have asked this question and you didn't. That matters to me. I'm held in check by the fact that what I'm doing in the media is in plain view. That's a big factor, I think.